Here's a story. Luka Doncic, Ja Morant, Zion Williamson, or Trae Young. Which young star would NBA execs build around? ESPN asked 20 members of the NBA world, coaches, scouts, executives, to rank those 4 men based on their talent and potential to lead a franchise. And here is how they finished. Luka number 1, Zion number 2, Ja Morant number 3, and Trae Young a distant 4th. Here's the thing. Luka's already great, so he's the surest bet. He's already averaging 29 points a game. My question about Luka Doncic, he's not overly athletic. And he played against pros in Europe when he was 16. So are we seeing the ceiling? Now, for the record, the ceiling's 29 points a game, 9 and 9. It's a great ceiling. But this is kind of it. Like what you see is what you get. Whereas with Ja Morant, I mean, he went to Murray State. He was obviously a late bloomer. He was not ranked by recruiting services. So I think Ja Morant was spectacular, and he is just scratching the surface. Zion, the NBA can't figure out his body yet. I'm not sure the Pelicans or Zion can figure out his body yet. He's a baby. Trae Young's good. I don't think he's as good as those 3 potentially. But this is not a knock on Luka, but I think European players often play against pros earlier, so they're more mature coming to the States. I think Luka is about 90% of what you're going to see. It's really good. Athletically, I don't think he's going to change. I think this is it. He's a 29, 30-point-a-game guy. He's going to win a couple MVPs. He's going to win a bunch of scoring titles. He'll finish as a top 10 scorer of all time. Like Dirk, he's a better player. I think he's a point guard, so he has the ball in his hands constantly. He'll have more control and more points because he's better earlier than Dirk. But Dirk was a hell of a player. I don't have a problem with it at all. I do think it should be considered, though, that Luka is more mature early. It's what I always said about Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. Baker came into the league, and by the time he played as a rookie, he was 23 years old. Sam Darnold's still not 23. And so I thought when Baker came out, Joy remembers this, I said, I think Baker is closer to his ceiling. What you're seeing is what you're going to get. This is kind of his act. Whereas Sam, I think you're like Ja Morant, I think Sam is just starting. His offensive line last year was atrocious. Atrocious. And his receiving core was bad. So I think Baker was older. He had more college starts, double the starts, significantly older. He had way better college coaching, Lincoln Riley, and he's right at the ceiling. Whereas Sam, I think, is scratching the surface. That's Ja Morant. Ja Morant, we're just seeing the beginning of this. Just the beginning of Ja Morant. Ja could average 29 a game, too. But he's not there yet. He's just not. He just needs reps. That's why this year and the virus, it's not helping these young guys. They need the reps. They need the games. So yesterday was actually, over the last week, and I thought yesterday was a tipping point on this. A 5-star point guard from UCLA who had committed decided, I'm not going to go to UCLA. I'm going to go play in the G League. His name is Daishawn Nix. Now that is 3 5-star high school players that are saying, we're not going to college. We're going to go to the G League. So bottom line is the NBA has been creating this G League for years and years and years and years and years because they want to control, quote, their players/assets earlier, and the players also want to get paid. Some kids just don't want to go to college. There's some good and bad to this. The good for a kid is he plays against pros. He's going to make some scratch. He's a pro earlier. And a lot of kids don't want to go to college. That's not, not everybody's built for college. The downside is the coaching's going to be egregious at some times. The towns you're playing in are awful mostly. And I don't think it's a great platform to show your smile, your game, your personality like Duke, Kansas, Syracuse, or a college program is for a year. But the top 10 to 12 high school kids in the country now are going to go to the G League. They're not going to go to college basketball. That's not the end of college basketball. College basketball's regular season has been irrelevant for 15 years. College basketball has been a 3-week sport. It's a bracket, not a sport, for the last 15 years. Nothing's going to change there. And we also have to be comfortable with sports do change. When I was a kid growing up, there was no UFC. Boxing was awesome. And then UFC arrived, and boxing shrank for about 10 years, and UFC ruled the world, and now boxing and UFC are both viable. When I was growing up, I'm sure this was the case with Joy, the Olympics were big. Like the Olympics were everything. I don't have a friend now. The World Cup now is what my friends watch. That's the big global event. I'm not saying the Olympics don't matter. People will watch it. But my buddies that I live around in Manhattan Beach, they're all World Cup guys. They're not into the Olympics and curling. It does gymnastics. They don't care. They're into the World Cup. In the 70s, when I was a kid, baseball was king and the World Series was everything. Now football's the king and the Super Bowl rules the world. Sports change. College basketball is no longer a growing, thriving business. But you know what this comes down to? Is that once again, and I hit on this theme all the time, doesn't matter what business you're in, you gotta adapt. You gotta evolve. And basketball has always been a sport where the player's more important than the coach. That's just a fact. I'm not saying basketball coaches don't matter, but you win when you have talent. In the NFL, you can have all sorts of talent. You got a bad coach, you're a bad team. In the NBA, you got a bunch of good players. They may fight and you may not win a championship, but you're going to win some games. You're going to win some games. And basketball, the NCAA is a big, slow-footed, red tape bureaucracy, and they should have seen 5 or 6 years ago that the NBA was creating a G League, and it was getting better and better and better and better. And the NCAA this morning reacted to that G League move by saying, okay. We're going to pay the players now. Okay, we'll give them money for likeness and YouTube. Okay, we were wrong on that. No. You can't treat your wife like crap and then she's willing to walk out the door on you and you go, hey, I got some roses for you. It's a little late. You treat somebody like crap for 15 years. Oh, honey, I got some roses. She's packed her suitcase and left. NCAA, big, slow, reactive, not proactive. You could see this G League coming. It was like a slow left hook. You know, it was like you saw it coming for 10 years. They'd create the G League, and then they found Gatorade and a supporter of it. They were growing it. And slowly but surely, what they were doing is saying, hey, NCAA, we think you're a bad business. Our kids want to get paid and play with other pros earlier like they do in Europe, and we're going to start paying them. And the NCAA, no, sat up in, their big ivory towers, and they just didn't recognize it. And this morning, the young players are leaving, and the NCAA now this morning reacts and goes, well, we probably should have. Okay, now we'll give you some money for your likeness. It's too late. I don't think it kills college basketball. I think the regular season's been dead for a decade and a half. I still think we'll watch March Madness. I still think people that live in Madison, Wisconsin will watch the Badgers play. I still think people that live in Lexington, Kentucky will watch the Wildcats play. People that live in Syracuse will watch Jim Boeheim, his team play. Tobacco Road, UNC, Duke, they're going to still watch those guys play. And there's still going to be some really, really good players that will play in the NBA that will go to college. But this is about the NCAA not paying attention. Bureaucrats, big, arrogant, not watching what's happening fundamentally at the kind of G League level. It's been happening for years and years. It started, and it was pretty bad, and then they got like Gatorade. Didn't it used to be called something else? Then it was the G League for Gatorade. Then they put more money into it and more, and they woke up this morning, and the G League now will pay guys $500,000, if you're the right guy. So, I don't feel sorry for anybody. I think the world changes. I've been doing sports forever. Baseball's not as big as it used to be. The World Cup's bigger. The Olympics don't feel quite as big. College basketball is shrinking. Boxing was big, shrunk, back. UFC didn't even exist. XFL tried, left. It may come back. Everything's changing. Sports gambling now is legal in Europe years ago. Now it's legal increasingly in America. You got to see the changes before they hit you in the face. And the NCAA was slow and reactive, not proactive on this. And it cost them some players. That's life. I've said this before. Steph Curry is not as great a basketball player as LeBron James, but he has unbelievable influence, more influence than LeBron James. Every high school basketball, AAU basketball, college basketball game, it's three-pointers now. That's Steph Curry. I'm not saying people forget this, but the three-point shot was around for 20 years. It was around for 20 years. It was considered a bad shot forever. And then Steph came. And now if you don't have four guys on the floor that can shoot it, it's a huge liability. You can have one guy that doesn't shoot a three, a power forward or a center. Outside of that, they even want Anthony Davis of the Lakers now to shoot some threes. So the influence Steph has had is greater than LeBron. LeBron's just a better player. Maybe Patrick Mahomes will be better all time than Russell Wilson, Brady, all that stuff. But Russell Wilson's influence is undeniable. Tom Brady's not getting guys drafted. Russell Wilson got Tua drafted. He got Johnny Manziel drafted. He got Kyler Murray drafted. Frankly, he got Baker Mayfield drafted. All these short guys, nobody used to want to draft anybody under 6'3" as a quarterback. And Jalen Hurts got drafted this weekend. And what did Philadelphia's GM Howie Roseman say? He goes, well, we missed on Russell Wilson in 2012, and that's who we wanted. We had a plan, we had a vision, and it started with Russell Wilson. And he got picked by Seattle right before us. So we went with Nick Foles. And, there would be no Carson Wentz in Philadelphia if that had happened, and the Eagles, my guess, would have a Super Bowl or two more than they had. So Russell Wilson now gets Jalen Hurts drafted because Howie Roseman's like, we missed on Russell. We're not doing it again, and I see a lot of Russell Wilson. What's interesting about this is when you have influence, generally speaking, the copycats miss. Michael Jordan had this. Michael Jordan was a ball-dominant guard. It used to be your point guard was a passer. Your guards didn't take up too much space. It was a big guys league. It was a centers league. And then Michael Jordan came in and you're like, oh, you don't need centers. They had Bill Wennington, Will Perdue, Luke Longley. It's not a center league. You can just have a ball-dominant guard who does all the scoring. And so everybody started falling for it. Let's get Iverson, and let's get Marbury, and let's get Stevie Francis, and let's get Damon Stoudemire. And he didn't get any titles. They were all good players. But it wasn't until Kobe came along, and even Kobe needed bigs, but Kobe shared the most traits with Michael. Relentless, super, super basketball and human being smart, aspirational, coachable enough. And then finally, Kobe was about 85% or 80% Michael. You finally found of all the people that looked and kind of played like him, it was like, oh, one finally works. But he needed a center, Shaq and Gasol, and he needed a great brand, the Lakers. Russell Wilson's got a lot of guys out there, Jalen Hurts and Baker Mayfield and Tua and Johnny Manziel. I think one of them, eventually we're going to find a copycat that's going to be about 80-85% of Russell. I think Kyler Murray, to me, is interesting. Like Russell, baseball player, like Russell, knows how to slide and not get hit. Like Russell, throws a beautiful football. Kyler Murray throws a beautiful football. But I do think there are things that Michael Jordan brought to the table that other guys just didn't have. And I think there's stuff Russell Wilson brings to the table. I mean, his family was like college presidents and went to Dartmouth. I mean, like by any standard of brain power for a pro athlete like Russell's, Russell also had a chip on his shoulder. His college coach at North Carolina State said, hit the road. We like Mike Glennon. He also is maybe the most emotionally mature person I've ever met at 22 years old when I first met Russell Wilson. So there are some things with Russell that are so unbelievable that you'll never be able to duplicate. You can duplicate his size. Kyler certainly kind of plays like him. But I think Russell and Michael are just so otherworldly that you could get a duplication. Kobe was a duplication, but just the relentlessness of Michael will never be duplicated. It's like Roy Williams said this week, I've never met a player that practiced harder, worked harder, played harder, cared more, and it just there's nothing else like that with Michael. Same with Russell Wilson. I mean, between the Dartmouth dad, the chip on the shoulder, he used to run as a kid through malls, weaving in and out of people. His childhood was unique. And then let's be honest about it. Whereas Michael got Phil Jackson, Russell got Pete Carroll. That helps too. It helps to get a Hall of Fame coach. That helps too.